They called me ordinary at that family dinner. His mother even laughed when I said I worked downtown. But when the mayor walked into that restaurant and shook my hand, thanking me for saving the city millions, you should have seen their faces drop. Sometimes ordinary people do extraordinary things. Before I tell you this story that changed everything, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you won't want to miss stories like this. Now, let me take you back to that night that silenced my critics forever. Let me tell you about the night my husband's family learned that being ordinary isn't always what it seems. My name is Angela, and this is a story about respect, assumptions, and how one dinner changed everything. I've been married to Robert for 3 years now. He's a good man, truly. But his family, well, that's complicated. Robert comes from money. His parents live in one of those neighborhoods where the driveways are longer than most people's entire properties. His dad owns a chain of successful car dealerships. And his mom has never worked a day in her life, but somehow always looks like she just stepped off a magazine cover. Me, I grew up in a regular middle-class home. My dad was a mechanic. My mom was a teacher. We were comfortable, but we never had money for fancy vacations or designer clothes. I never went to college because honestly, we couldn't afford it, and I needed to start working right after high school to help my family. Robert's family has never said it directly, but I know they think he married beneath him. There's this way they look at me, you know, like they're trying to figure out what he sees in me, like I'm some kind of puzzle they can't solve. The invitation came on a Tuesday. Robert's parents were celebrating their 30th wedding anniversary and they wanted to have dinner at Bella Court, this incredibly expensive Italian restaurant downtown. The kind of place where they don't even put prices on the menu because if you have to ask, you can't afford it. I spent 3 hours getting ready that night. I tried on 4 different dresses before settling on a simple black one that I bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack. It was nice, but I knew it wasn't designer. I knew his sister would show up in something that cost more than my monthly salary. Robert could see how nervous I was. "Angela, you look beautiful," he said, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror. "And remember, you don't have anything to prove to them." But see, that's where he was wrong. When you're constantly made to feel like you don't belong somewhere, you always feel like you have something to prove. We arrived at Bella Court at exactly 7 o'clock. The hostess knew Robert's family by name. Of course, she led us to a private dining room in the back, all dim lighting and expensive artwork on the walls. Robert's parents were already there along with his sister Caroline and his brother Michael. His mother, Patricia, gave me that smile she always gives me. You know the one. It's polite but doesn't quite reach her eyes. "Angela, dear, how lovely to see you." Air kisses that don't actually touch your cheeks. His father, Thomas, stood and shook my hand with the kind of grip that's firm, but somehow still feels dismissive. "Angela, good to see you." Caroline was there with her husband. Both of them lawyers at some prestigious firm downtown. She was wearing what I'm pretty sure was a Chanel dress, and her jewelry probably cost more than my car. Michael had flown in from Chicago, where he's a surgeon. Even Robert, sitting next to me, seemed to transform in their presence, his posture straighter, his vocabulary more formal. The first hour went well enough. We talked about safe topics, the weather, the restaurant, Thomas and Patricia's recent trip to Europe. I smiled and nodded and tried to contribute when I could, but mostly I just listened. Then the conversation turned to careers and achievements. This is always where things get tricky for me. Caroline started talking about a big case her firm had just won, something involving millions of dollars in corporate litigation. She spoke with this confidence that comes from knowing everyone at the table respects what you do. Michael jumped in with stories from the hospital, talking about a complicated surgery he performed the week before. The way he described it, you'd think he'd literally brought someone back from the dead. Then Thomas started bragging about the dealerships, how they'd had their best quarter ever, how they were thinking of expanding into 2 more cities, and then inevitably the spotlight turned to me. "And what about you, Angela?" Patricia asked, her voice sweet, but with something else underneath. "What is it you do again?" I can never quite remember. I felt Robert tense up beside me. He knew this was dangerous territory. I work for the city, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Downtown at City Hall. Patricia's eyebrows went up just slightly. Oh, how nice. What kind of work? I'm in the budget analysis department. I review city contracts and spending. There was this moment of silence. Then Caroline spoke up. Oh, so like filing, data entry. Actually, but Michael cut me off. That's great, Angela. Someone's got to do the paperwork, right? He said it with this patronizing smile that made my stomach turn. Well, Patricia said, dabbing at her lips with her napkin. We can't all have glamorous careers. Someone has to do the ordinary jobs. The word hit me like a slap. Ordinary. Thomas nodded along. Exactly right, dear. The city needs clerks and secretaries just as much as it needs doctors and lawyers. I felt my face get hot. I'm not a clerk, I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. I'm a senior budget analyst. I review million-dollar contracts for, of course, dear. Patricia interrupted with that same fake smile. I'm sure it's very important work, but her tone said the exact opposite. Her tone said, we're just being polite. Caroline leaned forward. I have to ask Angela, do you ever think about going back to school, getting your degree? I mean, you're still young enough. The implication was clear. Without a college degree, I was somehow incomplete. Lesser than Robert finally spoke up. Angela's great at what she does. She's been promoted twice in the last 3 years. Oh, I'm sure she works very hard. Michael said, it's just different. You know, some people are cut out for bigger things. Bigger things. As if what I did didn't matter, as if the work I'd been pouring my heart into for years was just some small insignificant thing. The dinner continued, but I barely tasted my food. Every few minutes, someone would make another comment about my education, about my background, about how lucky Robert was to have found someone so down to earth and practical. By the time we got to dessert, I was barely holding it together. I excused myself to go to the bathroom just to have a few minutes to breathe. When I came back, I could tell they'd been talking about me. There was this uncomfortable silence when I sat down, like they'd been caught saying something they shouldn't have. Then Patricia really went for the throat. You know, Angela, she said, setting down her wine glass. I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but sometimes I worry that Robert is settling. The table went dead quiet. Settling? I repeated. Well, yes. I mean, he's such an accomplished young man. Harvard MBA, successful career in finance. And you're very sweet, dear. But you're just so ordinary. There it was again. Ordinary. I felt something break inside me. 3 years of subtle insults, of being made to feel small, of having my worth questioned at every family gathering. I was about to respond when I heard a commotion near the front of the restaurant. Voices, footsteps, the sound of chairs moving. Everyone at our table turned to look through the glass doors of our private dining room. I could see people moving around in the main dining area. There seemed to be some kind of excitement happening. Then I heard a voice that made my heart stop. Excuse me, is there an Angela Thompson here? Angela Thompson from the City Budget Analysis Department. I knew that voice. I'd heard it on the news, at city council meetings, at press conferences. The door to our private dining room opened and in walked Mayor Patricia Williams, the mayor of our city, the woman I'd been working with for months on the biggest case of my career. She was flanked by 2 security officers and her chief of staff, and she was scanning the room with this determined look on her face. Then her eyes landed on me. Angela, she said, her face breaking into a huge smile. Thank goodness. I was hoping I'd find you here. I stood up, my legs shaky. Mayor Williams, what? What are you doing here? She walked over and took my hands and hers. I had to thank you in person. The City Council just finished reviewing your report on the Henderson construction contracts. Angela, what you uncovered, it's incredible. I could feel every pair of eyes at the table staring at us. Robert's family looked like they'd seen a ghost. Your investigation saved this city $57 million. The mayor continued, her voice filled with genuine admiration. 57 million, Angela. That fraud you uncovered in the road construction contracts. If you hadn't caught it, we would have been paying inflated prices for substandard work for the next 5 years. She turned to address the table. I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, but I had to meet with the city attorney tonight about the criminal charges we're filing. And when my assistant told me Angela might be here, I had to come by. Mayor Williams looked back at me. Because of your work, we're not just getting our money back. We're preventing other cities from being scammed by the same company. The FBI is using your analysis as the foundation for a federal investigation. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Not because I was sad, but because finally someone understood what my work actually meant. Angela, the mayor said, still holding my hands. You are exactly the kind of public servant this city needs. Thorough, ethical, brilliant, the kind of person who sees patterns that others miss, who isn't afraid to ask the hard questions. She glanced around the table again. I hope you all know how lucky you are to have Angela in your family. This woman is a hero. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's face had gone completely white. Thomas was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Caroline's mouth was literally hanging open and Michael looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Robert was grinning from ear to ear. Mayor Williams stayed for a few more minutes, asking about my health, my family, telling me about the commendation I'd be receiving from the city. When she finally left, promising to call me next week about a possible promotion. The dining room felt like a tomb. Nobody spoke for a full minute. Then Patricia cleared her throat. Well, she said, her voice much smaller than it had been all evening. That was unexpected. Thomas nodded slowly. $57 million, you said. Yes, I replied, my voice steady now. The Henderson Construction Company was overcharging the city by about 30% on every contract. They were also using inferior materials while claiming to use premium ones. If it had continued, it would have cost taxpayers even more in repairs and replacements down the line. Caroline spoke up, her tone completely different now. How did you figure it out? For the first time all evening, I felt comfortable talking about my work. I noticed discrepancies in the invoicing patterns, small things that most people wouldn't catch. But when you're analyzing hundreds of contracts, you start to see the patterns. I spent 6 months building the case, working with the city attorney's office, even coordinating with federal investigators. Michael leaned forward. 6 months. That's incredible detective work. It's just part of my job, I said. The job you called ordinary. The words hung in the air between us. Patricia sat down her napkin with shaking hands. Angela, I owe you an apology. We all do. I had no idea that your work was so important. Important work often looks ordinary from the outside, I said quietly. But every job has value. Every person has worth. You shouldn't have to be thanked by the mayor to deserve basic respect. Thomas cleared his throat. You're absolutely right. We were wrong to judge. The rest of the dinner was different. They asked me real questions about my work, about the investigation, about what it was like working with federal agents. They listened when I talked. They seemed genuinely interested in my answers. But here's the thing. I didn't need their validation anymore. The mayor's visit hadn't just vindicated my work. It had reminded me of something I'd forgotten in all those months of feeling small at family gatherings. I am not ordinary. My work matters. I make a difference. As we were leaving the restaurant, Robert pulled me aside. Angela, I am so sorry. I should have stood up for you more. I should have made them understand. Robert, I interrupted gently. You married me knowing what I do for a living. You've always supported my work, but your family needed to learn this lesson on their own. He nodded, looking ashamed. They did, and so did I. Honestly, I knew your work was important, but I didn't fully understand how important. On the drive home, I thought about all the other people out there doing work that seems ordinary to outsiders, but is actually extraordinary. The teachers shaping young minds. The social workers protecting vulnerable families. The maintenance workers keeping our infrastructure running. The analysts like me buried in spreadsheets and data making sure public money is spent honestly. We're all around you doing work that matters even if nobody notices most of the time. 3 months later, I was promoted to Director of Budget Analysis. 6 months after that, I was asked to testify before Congress about municipal contract fraud. The mayor still calls me whenever there's a complex financial investigation that needs someone who can see patterns others miss. Robert's family treats me completely differently now. They invite me to things. They ask my opinion on important matters. They introduce me to their friends as Angela, the one who saved the city all that money. But here's what I learned that night at Bellacourt. I was never ordinary. I was extraordinary all along. I just needed to stop letting other people define my worth for me. The work you do matters, even if nobody sees it. The value you bring to the world is real, even if nobody acknowledges it. And you should never ever let anyone make you feel ordinary when you know in your heart that you're not. Sometimes the most remarkable people are hiding in plain sight, quietly doing the work that keeps the world moving, one spreadsheet, one analysis, one investigation at a time. And then, just sometimes, the mayor walks into a restaurant and shows everyone at the table that ordinary people achieve extraordinary things every single day. If Angela's story struck a chord with you, know you're not alone. We all have value that others might overlook. Tap that like button if her journey inspired you, subscribe for more real-life stories that matter, and share in the comments a time someone underestimated you. Remember, ordinary people often accomplish the most extraordinary feats. See you next time.